Welcome, everybody. This is the second anniversary of Mastery Under Pressure. And actually, it's the second anniversary of Mastery Under Pressure sponsoring Under the Hood. And the way that the Hood got started is I did a TEDx talk 2 years ago, and it was called Befriend Your Inner Enemy. And what that meant was we have this whole operation that's going on out of our awareness very frequently. And I talked about it under the hood in the talk. And I said, well, patterns that are created in childhood impact us as grown-ups. And I am thrilled to have Mario here as my guest, but we're looking at leadership. And many times many young people think especially, oh, this person has it, or they've done it, or they're there, or they've arrived, or they've done something. And as we all know, or many of us do know, nobody escapes. Nobody escapes the challenges. And those of us that push through and that are resilient and persistent and keep going can create greatness. So that's really kind of the impetus of this show. And Mario, I want you to tell us a little bit about you. I don't have your written bio, and I frequently do this because I like you to tell us what you think is important for us to know about you.
Tina, I am so happy you don't have the written bio. So that, I'm unarmored as the host of Unarmored Talk podcast. So I am more than comfortable with the authentic, presentation. That's my world. But first of all, Tina, and everyone, more so Tina, thank you. Congratulations on 2 years. Before we went live, there's a lot of complexities to behind the scenes. And so congrats. I don't have a special button, so I'll clap.
Thank you.
A little bit about me is, from Pontiac, Michigan / Auburn Hills, Michigan. And then after high school, I went into the Marines, and I'm so thankful I did. And we'll talk about some of those soft skills that I learned while serving in the military, particularly the Marines. Did that for about 26 years. Said, I think I'm done having fun. And so after the Marine Corps, I have lots of experience with starting up companies, and that's in the for-profit sector, the nonprofit sector. And I'm also a professional content creator. And that means I create content. It's monetized. And so that's on, YouTube and TikTok and some of the other platforms. Very comfortable with them. And I'm a podcaster for Unarmored Talk podcast. And so those are all hobbies for me. They're easy, they're fun. They are, through science.
Yeah.
And then my part-time job is work for the United States Department of Labor, and I do about 9 workshops a month for giving employment workshops to transitioning service members and families around the world. That's enough within 5 minutes about Mario P.
There we go. All right, so that's a lot of the current stuff. So we're going to go back a little bit. And can you tell us a little bit about your family of origin? Kind of the highlights about your, how you were raised and some of the values that you were raised with and so on.
To your point, Tina, we talked about things that occurred to us in childhood, and then how it manifests as adults, as professionals, or whatever. I had my mom passed away unexpectedly about 6 years ago, or 8 years ago. But my mom and dad were married for 45 years. There was 4 siblings. I was the third kid, and I was the one that they say was going to be like Alvin and the Chipmunks for those who can remember. And I was the Alvin of the family. But loving family. Mom was very inspirational. She was a humanitarian. She just loved people. She loved humans, and that's I think where I got that from. And then dad was a provider. Dad was very focused, and dad was a helper. My dad was kind of the opposite, more introverted, but definitely very disciplined, very linear, and very focused on teaching us how to provide for family. So that was the balance that I had growing up. And then there was 3 boys, and then my sister, she's the oldest. So 3 boys, 1 girl. Wonderful family in Michigan.
So from that upbringing, okay, and the way that you were Alvin and Chipmunk, what were some of the patterns that you created that were really kind of the core pieces that have really kind of led to you being who you are as an adult?
I would say, Tina, observation.
Mhm.
Um, my mom treated, and my dad, they just treated everyone fairly. Like they never, they never saw someone who was maybe short or someone who was tall or someone who was maybe, Polish or Irish or black or white or whatever. They just treated everyone the same. And I remember that. And I remember, my mom would, she was a beautician, so she would have patients who have cancer, and the women would be bald, or she would have patients who are very well, I mean, customers, I'm sorry, that are very wealthy, but she never treated anyone differently. So
Mhm.
the value of understanding that every human being has value, and don't allow a name, a man-made word, or their culture or their belief system become a barrier, an internal barrier, which makes me, make a bias or judgment just by seeing them. Just treat everyone equally, and just remember that everyone's human, and then let's go from there. So I would say that's one of the most critical values that I learned from both of them.
Wow, and certainly one that we want to keep encouraging. And I moved to Washington DC. I lived in Philadelphia in a Jewish ghetto, and very specifically moved to Washington DC because I wanted my kids to be as colorblind. Nobody's colorblind, but as
Right.
colorblind in terms of seeing the human as possible. And so again, another very, very strong core value. And your mom being a hairdresser, she's like next in line to be the greatest therapist in the world, because hairdressers, people talk. And the fact that she was probably a very good listener, as I know that you are as well. So those were some of the really strong values that have taken you where you are. What were some of the kind of the behaviors and the patterns that you had to overcome that kind of got in your way?
Yeah, I would say, you know, um, my dad wasn't. He didn't show a lot of, not no emotions. I mean, so dad did not really show emotions. And what does it mean to cry? Are as a man, is it okay to be sad? So I had to learn that as I became an adult, that it is okay to cry with your children. It is okay as a man to remove your armor and look at your wife and say, I am hurt. I am depressed. I failed because I made a decision that impacted the family. So that was probably one of the barriers that I had to choose to overcome, was to again take that belief, make it a false belief, say, Mario, this belief is false. It is okay to show emotions, to be sympathetic and empathetic as a man. And it doesn't even make you less of a man. Matter of fact, what is a man? I'm 5'2", so if I'm less of a man, I guess I'll be like 4'5". I don't know. So that was one of the barriers I had to really overcome.
And how did that kind of show up in the military? I know you 26 years in the military. How did you manage? Because I think this is, again, I have three sons, and
Hmm.
so I know that this was an issue for them, and still as adult men, that soft, sweet heart. And it's again that the cultural toughness, but you were in the military. How did you manage that?
I didn't take a cookie cutter approach. I use that metaphor. The way I looked at every person that volunteered to join the Marines. First of all, congratulations. I mean, I was a drill instructor in Paris Island. Is I call it the number one leadership school, but it is not an easy place. And you have to have a lot of soft skills to graduate and make it. But I looked at every Marine as, you need to be individually led. Now it was transparent to them, but I did not just take this kind of macro approach to leadership on the hundreds of thousands of folks I've encountered. And it was really active listening and observation, social perceptiveness, watching. Maybe when I said this word, to this marine got inspired, but maybe, if I wasn't watching, being observant, maybe this marine got depressed from that. So being able to learn different behaviors under the leadership, banner, if you will, and not being rigid,
Hmm.
not being rigid. Everyone's different.
Well, I think that again, what I love to do on the show is really point out these things that people really take this in. Because every leader really needs to know who they're leading. Again, if you have an organization that's got, hundreds and thousands of people, I always say everything comes from the top. That's why I do this. That's really kind of really looking at the leaders, the people who have the big creative minds and visionaries and want to save the world and want to do how do we take that and then filter that down through an entire organization with those values. And this idea of each one of us as an individual, we learn differently, we react differently. I think is just a very, very important thing to actually point out. So
Tina, if I may, real fast, when I used to
absolutely.
advise the generals and the commanders, I would tell them, I'm like, look, you have, 5,000, you have thousands of civilians, Marine sailors, allied partners under your charge. How can you be with them without being with them? And they would say, Sergeant Major, which everyone who's watching, the Sergeant Major in the Marines is equivalent to or similar to a C-level consultant in the private sector. And I would say, think simple. Let's look at their birthdays, and then you personally sign a happy birthday to all of our folks every month. And I tell you what, Tina, that was powerful. We can be overseas, we can be United States, anywhere on a humanitarian mission or deployed, and they would remember getting those birthday letters from the CEO equivalent, and it was pretty cool. So that is another tip I will leave: how you can be with your people without physically being with your people, if you will.
So I think that you were probably way ahead of your time. That's what I think. But I am, this is like music to my ears because these are the things that we want to just keep impressing upon people. We're people, and we need that kind of recognition and that autonomy and that we're important and that we have a purpose. And so it's thrilling to hear that you actually were able to do that in the military. So
Hmm.
when did you kind of notice that you needed to make some adjustments? Like, give us like a story or something of this part of you that, as you said, that you needed to become more aware of that human side because you're very human. So, and you're talking about you weren't letting your emotions out so much. So when, give us a story.
I'll give you a couple. One, I would say the first time when I got married at 19 and my wife was 21 and she's a Navy veteran. We are about to celebrate 30 years of matrimony.
Happy
And and the first story was I struggled with saying I'm sorry. My self-reflection and self-awareness was incompetent, right? I wasn't. Yeah. So one day, she was at work, and I called her squadron, and they said Petty Officer Fields does not want to talk to you until you can learn how to say I'm sorry. And I was like, wow. I did a podcast on that one too. We did a special episode. So I said, I'm sorry. The second major one was recently. So a lot of folks don't know this, but in April, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. It
Mm.
had Tina had nothing to do with the military. Nothing.
Mm.
Nothing at all. It was 5 years of grieving from the death of my mother. My little brother died. My wife got sick. I got sick. If you don't remember, I was sepsis.
Yeah.
And thank God I survived. I was sepsis for 3 weeks and I made it. Um, it was 5 years of me trying to be the foundation of the family, to keep everybody together, to keep myself together after that rare blood infection, and that's what did it. 5 years of chronic stress. And what I realized was that when you're none of us have control of our brain when it goes into the insane quadrant.
Mhm. Mhm.
we think we're in control. That master's degree, I don't care if you got a doctorate, you're in a doctoral program, or you're a sergeant major in the Marines. When that brain goes into the insane quadrant, you have lost control. But what I learned is that maximize resources, listen to people, and gain a better understanding of who you are, what things you can control, what things you can't control, and then why. How did it happen? Understand the science and teach people, tell people, don't hide it. Don't come on the show and go, I'm great. No. But now what you're seeing Mario Fields who for about from April to now, I was like, I'm not doing anything. Now, with the help of the doctors, the psychiatrist, my wife, the psychologist, maximizing resources, I feel great. And I'm not ashamed to say that now I know how it feels when you're insane.
Yes, yes.
And it changed me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. You know what, my background is I'm a psychotherapist. And so I have been working to bring all of this together, right? So that we as humans get to know ourselves so well, so that
Mhm.
we can, because we're the first line, right? So anybody that we work with, or teams that we're on, or executive teams, or this is the person that we bring to that. And if we don't know this,
Yes.
right, we're working with a half a deck.
Yes. Maybe look with no spades. No. Yeah, right. And Tina, when I give my employment workshops and other leadership things, I say I have a leadership mutual fund. And my mutual fund is in three parts. 80, I said 90% of the time, as soon as my eyes open, and I'm short, so when I jump out the bed, it's like jumping out of a plane. But I said when when I wake up in the morning, m- for the time I'm up and conscious, 90% of my efforts are spent on me. Who are you? What does success mean to you? Not from the world.
Mhm.
Why are you doing this? And if I can't accurately answer it, I can't conceptualize my answer. I go back. Let's think some more. Mario, why? Why do you have that bias? Where did that belief come from? Was it when you were six? Like self-reflect, spend time on getting to know who I am. And then the other 5% is okay, now let's take that and translate that to make man better, to help people. Right. And then the last 5% is asking for feedback. Hey, how are you? How did I do? You saw that podcast episode. What's your thoughts?
Mhm. Mhm.
5% feedback, 5% let's application. Let's apply some things you learned about yourself. But the other 90% is internal. Who are you? What does that mean? Why did you say that? Why do you keep saying that word? Why do you and
So
it's cool.
it's
It builds
very cool.
clarity.
What could be
It
more
builds
interesting than
clarity.
you?
And they say you smile so much. I'm like, because I'm at peace, man. It's so clear. I know who I am. So anyway,
No, actually, you're the preacher here, because this is really. I just did a podcast. Actually, it was a panel that I was on about board governance, and it was all techie and this and that, and I kept bringing home this exactly what you're saying. Start with you. Actually, the topic was about dysfunctional boards, or conflict in boards, and how it can be used positively. But if you don't know your own biases, how could
right. And that board member could be the one initiating the conflict, and you don't even know.
Okay, so this is wonderful. So let me ask you another question, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A, because I know that there's people here that would love to talk to you as well.
Yes.
Um, who inspired you? Who are some of your mentors, or people that you just, wow, I want to be like them, or they helped me along the way?
Yeah. So outside my parents, spiritually, our Christian beliefs, our beliefs in Christianity. So I would say in the belief system, that was very inspirational, especially during real tough times. The faith, and my mom used to always say, Mario, you can choose to ground your soul in anything you want, but I hope you ground it in faith, in the Christianity faith. So I did. Outside of that, I would say, outside of my family and my immediate family, believe it or not, Oprah. If you go on my LinkedIn profile, there's only one person I follow. You can go right on there all the way down. It says influencer. You guys know that capability. Oprah. I studied her before I launched my first podcast. I studied her for 6 months, her nonverbals, everything. And I realized what made her very unique is her authenticity, her ability to be authentic with empathy, her level of humanitarian and accommodating, and then her ability to use her nonverbals and her verbal communication to connect to people. You can't go to college to get that. There's not enough money on earth that can give you those skills. And so she has really helped me become the podcaster and the host that I've been since 2020. And I'm thankful for someone like her who can really demonstrate those human skills live, and it's so natural.
Beautiful. I am sure she has done a lot of work on herself,
Oh yeah.
right? Okay, so that's what comes through,
Yeah.
right? These young people in our organizations, they want the leaders to be authentic. They want you to be real. They want you to be transparent. They want you to know their birthdays. And at the same time, as a leader, and you know this as well as anybody, okay, you also have to have, the guidepost and the parts that say, because I said so. So,
Yeah.
right? So I've said it here before and I'll say it again, as a leader, you have about as much room as a crease on a pair of pants. Everybody wants the leader and everybody wants to kill you off. Because you're too sweet, you're too soft, you're too this, then you become, oh, well, let's just ask Mario.
Y- and Tina, and I used to tell when I was in the Marines, I say, look, this is not likership. I don't want you to like me. Even when I was raising my kids, I mean, they're almost in their 30s now. Yeah. But I told him, I said, look, I don't want you to like dad. If you like dad, I have failed. And I told the Marines and sailors and all civilians with us, they like, "Ooh, Sergeant Major, good morning. Good morning. I am not here for all of you to go home and go, I like him. I don't want you to like me. I'm going to earn your respect. And that takes a lot of effort and hard work, and they're not the same. So let's buckle up. But I do not want you to like me.
And on that note, I'm going to open. We have a couple more minutes. Who wants to chat with Mario?
I've got a couple questions. I know last time I didn't have any questions, Tina, and I know you were disappointed, but
No.
I basically have two questions, and one is answer them in any order you want. One is why the Marines, and the second one is where was the tipping point where you realized that you really needed to get out of this rut? How did that actually happen? Because obviously, it's not like you woke up one morning and said, "Oh, it's time to do this." So, however you want to answer them.
No worries. I just want to make sure I got an understanding of your second question. The rut, are you referring what are
When
you
you
which
when you found yourself in a depression and got yourself out of the
oh
depression, seeking help from others, obviously I mean, not obviously, but you don't wake up one morning feeling depressed and the next morning like,
no.
okay, let's go.
No, no. First, there was this short Marine that came home, and he was real short. His name was Matthias, and he's like 5 foot nothing. And I was like, he's so confident, and he spoke well. And I was like, I know I like to party. And, I said, if I go to University of Michigan, I don't want to disappoint my parents because I have no discipline. And I was like, if that little dude can do it, and my family's all like Navy, it's like I think Marine Corps shouldn't be too bad. So really, Adriano, that's what happened, Adriano.
Really?
Is I was like, I'm just gonna do this for 4 years, go to school, and yeah.
Yeah.
And
Welcome to
the
Rio.
turning point around the depression.
Then the turning point around depression was my wife. Well, first I was journaling because I knew, I'm very self-aware, and I knew something was not right. What I mean by that is like, why am I not motivated to interview people? The things I'm passionate about, I was not passionate. I was losing my passion, and there
Right.
wasn't an answer. And then finally, I started getting super irritated, and I stopped smiling. Like my personality became the opposite. And
Mhm.
then my wife was like, I really think something is not right. I said, I agree. And I went back through my journal because I was journaling. And I had noticed without realizing it that this was actually starting about 10 months prior.
Mhm.
So it was the journaling, knowing something is not right. What does that mean? And then being very aware and not being afraid to ask for help.
Right. And the one thing about depression, if I could add to that, it's when we feel hopeless and helpless. And the important message is we're not hopeless. We
No.
can't see it. And we're not helpless because there are plenty of people around. So it's just that first step of asking for help that
Yeah.
can turn the corner for everything else. So great. Thank you, Adriana.
Cool.
Anybody else? We
Thank
have
you.
just a couple more minutes. Marmos, you got any comments? Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
thank you, Mario. Could you comment on importance and the role of accountability partners?
Oh
I have
my
a lot of
goodness.
I have a lot of younger students who I think they need accountability partners.
Yeah. How much money do you want to put on that question, Ramon? That's about $1 trillion. Accountability is critical. Holding other people accountable, not being don't defend. Accountability is critical. And having a partner that will hold you accountable is one thing, but you have to hold yourself accountable. And that's the trend I've seen is people not holding themselves accountable, blaming other people or the world or how they were raised for their outcome, where they're not internally going, well, what about me? So that's what I would like to add to that is yes, there's lots of value with having an accountability partner, but are you holding yourself accountable for your behavior?
It's it's a double whammy, right?
It is.
And I think just I'll add one more thing to it in terms of many times we are asked things and people want help and we're free to give it. And we keep sometimes many times we keep our agreements, but how many agreements do we not keep with ourselves?
Right.
And
Yes.
the same piece, I say I'm going to do this. I say I'm going to watch my weight. I say I'm going to watch this or watch that. But, you know, and so again, it comes back to the same thing that you're saying, keeping the agreements to yourself. If I say that I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
And then other people begin to trust you and respect you because your word is your word. Right? If your word is not, people, I don't need to say that, right? So people will not trust you, and trust is the most important thing that we begin to, it's what babies need to learn first. It's what groups need to learn, and that's what we need to learn. I love what you said. I want you to respect me. Right. So we are out of time. I always love this. It's 30 minutes, always goes really fast, but we pack a lot in. You packed a lot in, Mario. So thank you. So many highlights and points to remember. And thank you for being authentic and real, because honestly, I know I've been doing this long enough. You have a room of people. It doesn't matter how many people are in there. You scratch the surface just a little bit. This one's got depression. This one has, got bipolar, or either themselves or their family, or, loss, grief, all the human things that we don't talk about very much. And that's why I'm kind of doing this. So thank you again. Again, Mastery Under Pressure is the name of my company. There's a quiz that I have. If you want to go to it, it's called masteryunderpressure.net, and it will measure your awareness and your abilities on focus, relaxation, dealing with negative self-talk, how to visualize, and dealing with fear. So we kind of handle those things, and our peak performance is way up there. So thank you once again for my guests and Mario, my super guest, and I appreciate you all. Have a wonderful day.